Okay, next we will be moving into the potential referendum communication plan, right?
Yep. And I will go ahead and introduce this one with the help of Dan and Dan. Mr. Vader has a presentation to share with the board tonight on kind of some of what we've done so far to engage the community so that the board has the information that the board needs in order to make that decision on to whether or not to put a vote on the ballot in April, which again will happen at the meeting in January. As a reminder to the community, at the present moment, the plan is to ask the community to support the school district with $2 million a year in a non-recurring referenda for 5 years. And then there will be a whole next phase of this pending the board's decision to actually put the question on the ballot, which will again happen at the meeting in January. That then we'll do some further communications and tons of community engagement so that our community really has all of the information that they need in order to make the best decision possible for them. And in hopes that they will really provide the support to us in our schools that we need to serve the children of this community for years to come. So with that, I will pass it over to Mr. Bader.
Thank you for having me and for the opportunity to share kind of where we've been and where we may be going if the board so chooses to go to referendum. Really, some of the communication that we've engaged in goes back to budget education. It's how the work that this board does and has to do and that the administration has to do to prepare a budget each year. So during the 2022-23 school year, we kind of embarked on an education campaign that was kind of spearheaded by this budget podcast to inform people where revenue comes from, what our expenditures are, how the timeline works for schools. The key to good communication is telling things in multiple different ways in the same story. This is not a movie. I won't make you watch a movie tonight, but these are just little snippets of like a video that illustrates this in a small bite, whereas like the podcast was a long bite, and then we had it in text, and we built on our previous website, text that kind of goes along with the whole budgeting process and how it starts. We moved into when you were faced with the different scenarios that you had with last year's budget. We tried to be very forthright with that on the website. We captured these meetings and started kind of branding it, if you've noticed, with the piggy bank, talking about in different ways the kind of struggles that the school board had for the budget for this year. During that process, the board asked us to develop an advocacy plan. During the biennium process, there's a chance to maybe move the needle a little bit and convince lawmakers in Madison of the needs of public education, given the history of funding in the schools. So we did. We brought together stakeholders from across the district, parents, teachers, staff. We had a committee that met and planned out this whole stand up, speak up advocacy event for April. That was also accompanied by a website that had different ways to kind of explain the dilemmas again in different ways, and modes for contacting your elected officials and asking them to support public education. This board also during that time had passed its own resolutions asking, even the year before, it had gone down the business route and asked and teamed with businesses to try to move that funding. And it all culminated in this April 4th event, where we had an art build that was organized by the teachers union. We had our parents speaking at it. We had a letter and postcard campaign. The value of this event, besides the fact that more than 200 letters and postcards were mailed to our elected officials, and we heard back, so they'd received them. They were noticing it even before we had the event. Was really part of that education campaign to tell people what what pressures the board was under, what our school district, how it uses its money and where it comes from. That moved into an update. When the state did make its budget decisions, we did another update on the podcast. We were getting, thousands of downloads a month on these. So this was the best venue at the time to share that information. This ended the first season of our podcast, and kind of put people back to where we were. You'd already passed your budget, but this is what it meant, what the state budget meant for us, and kind of wrapped up that segment of our school funding story. And then this school year started in the summer. We start in July. During this time period, we focused really on celebrating our schools first and foremost, working in the community to kind of take the temperature about a potential referendum, knowing that was one way that maybe the board would move to tackle some of its budgeting problems. Provide lots of opportunities for feedback. We're still doing that now. And then the people in this administration sharing their knowledge with you about the process for if you're going to have a referendum, what that process is and what it might look like and what one would be. These were accompanied with websites, again, FAQs, information as we moved along. In August, in July, we welcomed our new superintendent, but in August, we had our first episode of the podcast was an introduction to her and her take on where we were with the budgeting process. So again, keeping this in the conversation even through the summer. During that time, we surveyed our district leaders, had frank discussions with them. We met with city officials and a sampling of community leaders. This community has a lot of leaders, and we didn't get to everybody, but we tried to do a good sampling of them to kind of gauge how they thought people might react if the school board decided it wanted to go to a referendum, what they might be interested in, what should be included in it. And that was the lead up to another kind of public forum. In September, we kept celebrating our schools, and it happened to be that the things we wanted to celebrate were also had elements of successful past referendums in them. So getting the school ready for the new year, that is an amazing amount of work by our building staff. But the high school, which was recently paid off, was part of a 2024 referendum, right? Or sorry, 2004 referendum. It was paid off in 2022 early, right? So good fiscal stewardship, but also really highlighting the work of the building staff. 4K education, that is a draw to this district, and that was included in the 2018 referendum. So these things were referenced in there because they're important, and the community should know that the use of their dollars has not, we've lived up to the promises that we've asked for. We welcomed our new teachers. We talked about some of the struggles of keeping teachers and hiring new ones, and kind of the light on their feet work that our hiring team has to do to secure those teachers, because they're interviewing in multiple places and getting multiple offers. And so we got to meet some of them. And then, of course, public engagement. This is not directly related, but Deidre and each principal was out, and some of our administrators were out at the farmers market, meeting people, talking to them, hearing what they had to say about the schools, getting feedback, and just saying hello. And of course, in September, we celebrated the football field, right? I think people need to know that was paid for without incurring any additional debt. That we talked about this a lot, about good stewardship, about our community involvement, about the launching a legacy committee and their commitment to helping pay for it, and the Bucyrus funds, and the speed at which it was actually completed. And, we broke ground in April, and here we are in September having our first football game. You can see the excitement on the students right there, and our beautiful field, which we've seen so many times now. The track is actually completed. I don't have an aerial photo of that, but that is just stunning. And as Superintendent Raymer said, this spring, all the fields will be done, right? And that's in 1 year without incurring additional debt. People need to know that as stewards of their money. We also launched the SM Proud hashtag, which all of our social media posts in the past have been SM Way was our hashtag. SM Proud, we decided things we're proud of. SM Way was our culture leading up to then, but SM Proud is, we really wanted to call out the things we're proud of this year. Not very visual, but we held open sessions in each of the schools. Dan went and sat in a public space in each of the schools and invited the staff to come and talk to them about the district's budget, about a potential referendum and what that might mean, and to get their feedback as residents or as constituents. That's when we started building out our frequently asked questions. We looked at what people asked about other referendums we've had and answered those questions for this potential referendum. And then during that time, we planned a rocket fuel for thought event. So one big event where people could just come if we didn't find them in the community. That leads us into October. That's when we held the event. That's when the conversations with you started about what a potential referendum might look like. And we continue to celebrate our schools, right? I mean, you can't talk about our theater program without talking about the Performing Arts Center, which came about from the 2004 referendum, right? You can't talk about it. And in fact, in that one, our theater director mentioned it himself, that is one of the premier performing venues in Milwaukee, not just South Milwaukee or our neighbors, but he challenged anyone to show him a better performance space. The stories that you saw that we talked about on our podcast and our website were also included in Bridges Magazine, which gets mailed to every resident in the district. So those stories are in here. We publish this twice a year, and in the spring we get to be the cover story and the first stories, and then in the fall the city gets that chance. So the muralist you see is from their stories, and then ours are in there too. And then in November we continue to gather feedback. Dan, Mrs. DeFord, myself all sat out at a table and talked to people about what the impact of the potential referendum could be, what the options were before the board, what some of the goals of that potential referendum might be if the board decides to go forward. And we accepted feedback at these events. We continue to come before the board to talk about the amount, the duration, whether it's recurring or non-recurring. And then at the most recent meeting, as you know, what the draft language might be and which election to hold it in. That leads us to this month. Two of our board members agreed to go onto our podcast and talk about what they are hearing from the community. And then we talked, I spoke about kind of what the context of that is, how many of our neighboring districts or the districts in the state have done this recently, how many have done it since the 90s, and kind of just putting it in context. Does this make sense for us? It makes sense in education. And then leading to tonight, kind of what our overview is going forward. So again, looking forward, if the board decides that it wants to go to referendum next month, starting next month, we will take all the tools that we've been building up since I started here, the new website, the district newsletter, the middle school newsletter, and start sharing, and our social media context. So we've purposely moved from being like our kind of family photo album to showing what our children are doing in school and what they're working on, and talking about what the board's doing, and intentionally sharing news from the district. We're using all that, and then we'll also have these additional services that are coming online, that would come online in the spring, in the winter and the spring. A lot happens in January after, if you decide to go to referendum. Immediately we'll announce it, right? That would be probably a short, quick video, Facebook post, kind of explaining the process so far and what you've heard. You'll be given some options for what a theme and a feel of this might be. Logos like the rocket fuel for thought, for the speak up, speak out event, those send a message without giving a message, right? Without words. Picture's 1,000 words. A logo is also worth 1,000 words. So you have a choice on that. We will develop a social media plan, which is really just week to week. What are we going to post about this week? We'll maybe focus on the items that you've decided that you want that money to go towards. And then in the meantime, we'll be composing a pretty comprehensive newsletter. So it'd be think of a cardstock folded in half, letter size document that has everything that we've talked about to this point, plus voting information, and trying to be the be all of kind of what this potential referendum might be. Think icons that are related exactly back to those things that you might that you're focusing on, so that when they go to our website, they recognize the same information. So if it's a piggy bank, it's a piggy bank, or a person exercising something, those icons will follow this whole campaign straight through. That draft will be available. The timeline for printing and mailing is pretty far out, so we do have to do that pretty quick after you decide. And then we'll design a PowerPoint presentation that you'll be able to take with you if you go to speak to groups. Our district officials will use them if needed. And again, that'll be on our website, so it'll be constantly giving the same information in different ways, and being transparent and having everything that we're saying in the community available to anybody at any time. That's January.
So-
That's a big month.
Dan, can I jump in just for a second?
Yeah.
And I think a really important thing, if any of the community members are listening or somebody wants to watch it the next day, if you have a community group and you would like us to come and kind of share the information, I think sending an email to you so that we can make sure that we get a team of people there would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Your contact information is right on our website as well, but if there are any, community groups, they've been working out, trying to set up a meeting with our Lions Club and a couple of other, I know, really active, important groups in this community. But if there are others and somebody is interested in having us come and just share the information as we know it and have it today, we are more than happy to do so.
Absolutely. And that email address is info@sdsm.k12.wi.us. That's a general inbox that I get that we can certainly share. Easier to remember. One thing that'll happen in January and February too is that, upon the board's decision, but we would like a video, a professional video of the board describing the year you've gone through and the decisions that you made and how you came to this. Again, to kind of live out there. So if we're not going out to, if we don't talk to someone, they can at least see it for themselves. That is for social media, and that's for our website. Links on postcards, links on cards that we hand out. It would all kind of point back to there. Social media continues. We'll have a second mailer informing people with the QR code to point them back to our website, but also voting information about when the vote would be and polling places. And we're going to have a public forum similar to Rocket Fuel for Thought, but not looking back, but instead looking forward at what we're going to do with these dollars in the future. A mailer 3 would be drafted, and this is to address any concerns that we hear in the forum that might be out in the community. So we can be ready with that. And that leads to March, where the timeline is shortened a little bit. Early voting starts, so we would want to have reached as many voters as we could before then. Spring break is a little bit of a lull, so we are going to keep our social media going during that. And that's when the third mailer is sent out. And we'll have a second forum if needed, if the board feels it's needed. We'll have a second forum in March. And that leads to April, where the board vote happens pretty quick after spring break. And then we'll have to prepare post-vote messaging, however it goes, one way or another. Happy to take any questions. I know that was a lot and I'm talking fast, but we wanted to give you kind of a high-level plan and just know that we are ready to work on it as soon as we receive word from the board. and that we are thinking through these things.
Yeah, a couple of things. I know we spoke a couple of months ago about engaging the Donovan group. And so that's some of the work that they will be doing with us is to understand how to best reach the constituents in our community. And then a couple of weeks ago, I was able to go to the Lakeview PTO meeting and just share kind of where we were as a district and as a system and what the board is considering at the present moment. And a lot of interest from parents there about how they could help as well, or how they could like to be involved. So that everybody in the community knows, as you see us out and about communicating about this, there are quite a few rules that guide what employees and what the board are and aren't allowed to say about a referenda, as once that vote goes on the ballot about trying to sway people's vote one way or the other, our job becomes just simply to continue to share information. But students and parents and other community members have the ability to then, influence each other or suggest that people vote one way or the other when it comes to the referenda. So we'll definitely be looking for lots of engagement from our community, from our families that have students within our schools, as well as our families that do not, as we know that strong schools have tons of research behind them, that they lower crime rates and they increase home values and all of those types of things in a community. And there's a lot to celebrate within this community. So doing this work together will be really, really important as we head into that April 2nd vote, pending the board's decision in January.
And I think the board and the community should know, at least the feedback we've gotten from people outside the district that do this all the time, that we have done far more before a board vote to decide to go to a referendum than most do. That these things kick off after a board decision. There's not often a lot of information gathering before, but we want everyone to know where we're at and where we came from, and that started almost a year ago.
Yes, it did. Well said. We've been. It's been a full discussion. It's incumbent upon us in our position to tell this story, eyes wide open, and I don't think we've needed to oversell it. It's the story is quite clear once you hear it. There is the COVID money is going away, and it's leaving us with a budgetary cliff that will affect our students in this community. And I'm proud to be a member of this board and working with this administration to tell this story to our community and let the chips fall where they may. But I think we are telling our story in a proper that's both seeming and fit. I'm very pleased with how we've gone so far.
And we do have an advantage within the community right now and within our portion of what the school district does to contribute to the tax dollars, as we've talked about at the board level a couple of times, but always good reminders for the community that we do have some energy efficiency debt that is also now falling off our books or being paid off. So that will leave us an opportunity to actually ask the community to give the support that we're asking for at a less of a tax impact or a relatively small tax impact. And while we don't want to have any increase in the taxes, as we know that our families and our constituents are equally strained by some of the challenges with the current rates of inflation and all of those things, this would allow so many good things to happen for our school district, for the children in it, and for our broader community and the long-term impacts of some of what we do here. That and have a relatively small impact on the homeowner and on the taxes at the same time. So we're in a rare opportunity right now to take advantage of those two things.
And I forgot to mention, I probably would like some of you to come back for another podcast in January, February to really kind of go along with the explainer video to just, I think people hearing from you who've been in the trenches of this for a year is the best story that you can tell. And hearing it from your voices very close in their earbuds or however they're listening to it in their car just shows that this is not a decision that's been taken lightly. And the value of that living out on the internet and on our website is just invaluable.
Now, currently on our webpage, right, isn't there a link to certain information about this?
There is, so we have an initial FAQ on there. There is a explainer of how the fiscally we got to this position. And I'm archiving all these conversations on there so that people could follow along and watch these snippets of the board meeting as they've occurred. I'm back in November. I'm gonna be into October next, but they don't have to pull through the whole meeting just to understand where these discussions came from.
And then have you seen demand for that on that section of our webpage, or are we gonna try to communicate that to people to click on that with any, like a email or a text or something?
Yeah, so in that newsletter, and in these conversations we've had, we keep pointing people to our website. Mrs. DeFord did that in and you did too, I think, in the podcast. We put it right on the top of the website, right in the banner. Try to make it as most visible as possible. All of that ramps up, if the board decides to go in January, but we want people to be able to find it quickly and easily and understand it in a quick way, right?
Yeah, and there is also a Google form still active on our website. So if somebody had additional thoughts around what's going on with the referenda, you can actually put your things right in there. One of the questions is, I would like somebody to reach out to me about this issue. And then that is a place where people could put their name and their phone number or whatnot. And we're happy to give them a call and answer whatever questions they have as well.
We've consistently asked the same questions, and with the chance to say whatever you'd like so that we can look at data in aggregate and see how people feel. So it's not a disparate inbox. It's very clear that we can kind of filter through what people are saying and decide if there are any pulse points that we need to address.
For anybody that's coming to this fresh, so like the newsletter goes out and they're seeing it and they might not be aware of it because they have lives going on. Is there a way for them to see maybe a timeline of what you just presented as far as just like benchmarks or maybe milestones of what the school district has done and the board has looked at over the years? And
That's a
just
great
something
idea.
really, really quick.
Yeah, that is a great idea. The history of this financial struggle goes back since I started and well before that. So, but
As far as when like these discussions have started in earnest.
yeah, and that's the video clips, but but a bulleted list that is totally worth it with links that go back to those videos if they need to be. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and just as a reminder again, for anyone who's listening, or if somebody's hearing this information for the first time, not only does it help us mitigate the budget deficit, which we've done a lot of work on already, within the system, it is cut down significantly from where it was in the projections in the spring, based on the very, very hard work of Dan and our business office team, as well as everyone who works within our system to really try to find dollars where we can and shift things around to create any efficiencies we can with little to no impact on the students that we're serving every day. And so some of it is to help us mitigate that budget deficit. But the other things that we are really looking to do are create more of those K-12 articulated pathways. You heard some information about that tonight from the middle school kids with the new STEM program at the middle school. That's one avenue, but that's one class that kids are taking occasionally. And again, the number of families who I don't think and students who realize all of the amazing opportunities we offer at our high school, we have to start planning for some of that so much earlier. And we have to put a little relief into the elementary school system because our elementary teachers could definitely benefit from having some additional prep time and some additional opportunities for elementary students to be exposed to different things. So that's one of the things, the dollars. So it helps us mitigate the budget, which allows us to pay teachers what they, what we would love to be able to pay our teachers all the time as within means that we have, and allows us to add some K-12 articulation to our plan versus just waiting until junior or senior year to access some things. It allows us to do some technology upgrades. We met with an organization tonight who had bought some of our smart boards and, all of the ancillary equipment, projectors, all of those types of things. Those evolve every day and our kids need those things, that our staff needs those things in their hands. And then the last one is really to look at our safety measures. We are, our buildings are safe. Like, we're going to assure the community that our buildings are safe, but what we want is the absolute gold standard of safety for our kids every single day. And over the last several years, lots of dollars have been dedicated to that. We have increased the cameras, we've increased a bunch of things to make sure that we're constantly focused on safety. We've increased trainings, we've increased all kinds of things, but there is more we can do. And we talked today about alarms on doors, if doors are propped open, and key fob access, so that we're tracking who's coming in and out and really tightening down on some of the things. Our facility is amazing and beautiful, but it has a lot of access points. So we need to make sure that we're constantly monitoring every single one of those as best we can for safety. So those are the additional things that it would allow us. We're doing them, whether, with the additional dollars or not. The speed and the rate at which we're able to enhance the experience for students is quite accelerated with the support from the community.
I was just gonna comment on those mitigation efforts as well. I forget if it was the November 1st or maybe an earlier meeting, but hearing the presentation, I think really does a good job of saying the admin and district have taken all measures possible to mitigate this as best we can, and we wouldn't be here unless we absolutely needed to, but having that as a front end piece helps, which I know you said you're getting to cutting those clips and making them, easy to access and digestible, and having that out there as well is going to be good.
And the public should know they're available right now if they want to go on the school board website and click on the link to watch, but the whole meeting is there, and we're trying to make it a little easier to find
Thank you.
those discussions. That by itself, recording our board meetings and presenting them has been, one of those efforts that we've taken to be transparent. And people can go back at least a year now and see these board discussions.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you for the really comprehensive communication plan and overview of like how we got here and everything that has occurred up to now. I think it was really helpful.
Will you be sharing this presentation anywhere else, or is that just for this meeting?
This was designed for the board, but it was with the intent to show where we've been. So it can be captured in a video where it just runs through with narration or other parts. But it's part of the record, so it's available.
It's pretty straightforward. Anyone
Yep.
could spend 2 minutes watching.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
especially all the pre-work we've done.
Mhm.
That
Yeah, I think that is important for the community too, right? This certainly isn't a decision that anybody is taking lightly, and we are still actively looking for that input from the community anywhere that the community would like to share their thoughts. All right,
Thank you.
thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.